What's up everybody, and welcome back to Auto Wisdom. Today we're sitting behind the wheel of a 2024 Toyota Tacoma TRD Pro. Now, before we get into the driving portion of this review, I do want to go ahead and cover some of the technical specifications of this truck because there's a lot to cover. And so we'll go ahead and break down some of the mechanical aspects, including the suspension, what the TRD Pro offers relative to the other Tacoma trims, and then we'll go ahead and take this thing on road to see how it drives. So the 2024 Tacoma TRD Pro rides on Toyota's new global architecture, which is the TNGA-F, and it's a body-on-frame modular architecture that's shared between both Lexus and Toyota off-road vehicles. For the TRD Pro, stylistic changes include some super wide fenders, gloss black accents, rigid fog lights and a light bar, an ARB rear bumper, red recovery hooks, a TRD skid plate, and a black accented roof. Power is sourced from a 2.4-liter twin-scroll turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, as well as a 48 horsepower electric motor that's stuffed between the new 8-speed automatic transmission. And that setup is good for a combined 326 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque, which actually outpaces both the Ford Ranger Raptor as well as the Chevy Colorado ZR2, at least when it comes to torque. This is backed up by a 2-speed transfer case and a push-button electronically locking rear differential. We also get manual electronically disconnecting front anti-roll bars and 33-inch Goodyear Wrangler rugged terrain tires for that meaty off-road look and function. In terms of suspension, it's a double wishbone setup up front with a multi-link in the rear, 2.5-inch Fox Racing QS3 internal bypass shocks with remote reservoirs for the rear suspension that allow you to manually adjust the compression stiffness through 3 separate settings. We also get Fox internal floating piston hydraulic bump stops that greatly soften the blow when the rear suspension bottoms out if you're doing jumps and taking this thing through some high-speed off-road trails or sandblasting. And the springs and anti-roll bars are tuned for high-speed handling. The upper control arms on the front suspension are fully forged. They are anodized red units etched with TRD Pro logos, and the whole package gives the truck a 2-inch lift in the front, a 1.5-inch lift in the back, which works out to approximately 11.5 inches of ground clearance. This truck is also 3 inches wider than the standard Tacoma, which is already 3 inches wider than the outgoing Tacoma that it replaced. So very, very wide truck. And from a design standpoint, this truck is absolutely menacing. It is very beefy, it's muscular, and it looks much more akin to the American off-road trucks that we see. And I definitely think that was a purposeful design choice by the Toyota TRD department. Finally, the TRD Pro comes standard with a sweet set of sport bucket seats that come included with some integrated shock absorbers that Toyota calls isodynamic performance. And this helps with compression for the passenger and the driver when they're driving off-road. It helps to absorb those bumps and offer a more smooth ride quality, something that I've never seen before in a pickup truck for consumer grade use. So definitely a cool feature that I very much appreciate. All right, so let's go ahead and see how this thing drives. That's pretty quick, especially compared to the prior gen Toyota Tacomas. This thing picks up much more torque and a very sharp throttle response with a level of immediacy that was completely absent with the old V6. I think in large part that is due to the electric motor providing instantaneous torque fill while the combustion engine spools up the turbocharger and gets into the power band. But when you get on the throttle, you can feel that electric motor assist. This thing's got good power. Wow, very impressive actually. I was not expecting it to feel this quick, and most of that is torque really. But the throttle response is sharp and the ride quality is very compliant. Very impressed with these Fox dampers. I wouldn't say it's quite Ford Raptor levels of plushness with the suspension. All right, let's test that acceleration one more time. Good power. Definitely not a charismatic sounding 4-cylinder engine. It's got this very kind of muffled, raspy growl that is just kind of there. Not particularly inspiring in terms of the soundtrack that this truck makes. But I have it in sport mode right now, and it's got a lot of grunt. And with that hybrid system, I mean, Toyota really does a great job of integrating electric motor assist into their combustion engine vehicles. They've been doing it for decades now. And this Toyota Tacoma TRD Pro is no exception. It definitely makes the case for why a hybrid actually gets the job done quite well in this type of vehicle. And I can definitely see for lower speed off-roading, particularly if you're doing rock crawling or traveling through some deeper mud, that immediate torque delivery from the e-motors would definitely help to get you out of some very rough terrain. The steering is relatively light overall. It does weight up a little bit when you kind of huck it into a turn. It's devoid of a lot of feedback, which I'm not surprised in the slightest that that is the case. But it's relatively sharp as well, which I like. It's very responsive, and it makes this truck feel a lot smaller than it actually is. That sharp steering response, especially in the front axle, really kind of helps the chassis feel more athletic than it actually is. And it doesn't feel lazy in any way. Paired with that sharp throttle response, it's almost got that sports car-like characteristic. Now, this is in no way a sports car. Does it even come close to being a true sports car? But for an off-road truck, you can definitely feel the performance DNA inside of it that Toyota decided to implement. Go ahead and give it a little more gas, and definitely gets up pretty good. It's like a 6,200 RPM redline, something along those lines, and it's got a healthy amount of power. It gets up to speed very easily. I can only imagine that if you're sandblasting or taking this thing, through lighter gravel, it would really just pick up pace with no problems whatsoever. Now, the suspension itself, I really do like the way that it's damped. Like I said, it's got a lot of compliance, but there is a level of firmness to it that does tell me as the driver what the truck is doing, particularly at the front axle, which I'm surprised because there's not a lot of feel necessarily coming through the steering wheel itself, but I really do like this feeling of control and somewhat precision that the truck provides. It's very impressive, actually, and this is at least with its on-road dynamics. I can only imagine how this would feel off-road, but I certainly don't have any doubts whatsoever. I do also really like this beefy steering wheel, and from a driver's standpoint, the driver positioning of this truck is excellent. Very comfortable sport bucket seats. I do like the bolstering that they provide, especially if you're going to be doing some higher speed off-roading. You're really going to come to appreciate that, because you're not going to be sliding around all over the place. You do feel like you have a decent amount of visibility throughout the cabin, and the A-pillars aren't too thick. There's a very crisp head-up display as well. That helps to show your speed along with what gear you're in, which I think is very beneficial in a truck like this. I do like the gauge cluster. It's full digital, but it's very easy to read. It is a little bit customizable in regard to some of the departure angles and kind of showing you what the truck is doing in terms of its setting. And you do have still, Toyota does a good job of implementing physical controls, physical buttons for HVAC and the different driving modes that you'll be utilizing this truck for. One thing I do wish that is absent from this truck, and I'm actually quite surprised, is paddle shifters. For a truck that is designed for high performance driving, particularly in an off-road setting, having the ability to control what gear I'd be in to optimize the powertrain dynamics is something that I think I would have really appreciated, and I'm honestly disappointed by the fact that they are absent in this kind of truck. I can manually control what gear I'm in from the shifter down here in the center console, but in terms of being able to have both my hands on the steering wheel, paddle shifters would have been very nice. Now, this truck does have a fair amount of lean and body roll, which is to be expected with the compliant Fox dampers, but it eats up terrain with ease. It's really nothing to complain about by any means. And there is a little bit of positive camber at the front axle, so I do think that if you were to really push this car on some pavement and tarmac, you would definitely run into understeer. The front end would probably want to wash out, but for off-road driving, should not be an issue. In terms of the cabin isolation, it's very quiet in here, it's very comfortable. We do have a JBL sound system, a large infotainment display, which essentially just looks like a massive tablet was tacked onto the center of the interior right here, but it gets the job done. Toyota's infotainment systems do feel somewhat dated. They don't feel super up to date and modern, especially compared to some of the American and European competitors, and it lacks a lot of truck specific features in terms of customizability with the drivetrain as well as the driving modes. If you compare this to something like the Ranger Raptor, the infotainment really blows it out of the water, as well as the gauge cluster. This definitely feels like a step back in terms of graphical performance, but really the money is invested in the powertrain, in the suspension technology, and overall you're also getting that brand reputation, the resale and reliability of a Toyota vehicle. I do also like the addition of a lot of these aftermarket components that are integrated from the factory, including the ARB rear bumper, the rigid light bars. You get that beefy skid plate as well for the underbelly protection of the vehicle. And there are a lot of serious performance upgrades that one could definitely benefit from if they're going to be taking this thing off pavement. And that's really what the TRD Pro is all about. And this has a relatively steep price tag. Right now, you're looking at about $65,000 or so for a new one. So it's definitely to be expected that you're going to get this level of performance and this level of refinement off-road. I think some people may have some difficulties swallowing that sort of price tag, especially when there is the aftermarket that you can resort to. Maybe some people, some owners or potential buyers might find it more beneficial to pick up a TRD off-road trim and then just take it to the aftermarket, throw 10 grand or so in suspension upgrades, and you'll have something that is arguably just as capable. Let's give it a little more power again. Right around 6,000 RPM is when the automatic transmission shifts. Higher speeds, 80 plus miles an hour or so, you do get a decent amount of wind noise, but it's nothing crazy. The torque fill with the electric motors, though, is something that is really impressive, and I think a lot of trucks in the future are going to benefit from this, especially if the powertrain has been done up right. You don't feel any type of turbo lag or any type of laziness from the engine because the electric motor is there to just substitute the deficiencies of the combustion engine. So with all that said, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up for this review today. This is a really cool truck, and I definitely think it's an absolute treat to drive. Unfortunately, we're not really going to be taking it off-road for this review, but in terms of the on-road dynamics, I am impressed overall, and I've been left with a very positive impression of this vehicle. I do think Toyota is definitely stepping it up in terms of their off-road capabilities from the factory, and I like what they're doing here. If you're somebody that's not looking to touch the truck, you just want to buy a truck that's fitted and off-road capable out of the box, you never want to have to resort to the aftermarket, something that's been done up by the Toyota engineers and comes slapped with a warranty on it, this is a great truck. You just have to be prepared to pay the price for it. If you enjoyed this review, please go ahead and leave a thumbs up on the video, as well as subscribe to my YouTube channel down below. And with all that being said, I will catch you guys in the next one. Take it easy, everybody. Bye-bye.